Hola, estudiantes de español. This is grammar topic 20, informal commands, and we are going to stick strictly to just taking notes on la gramática today, and then in class we're going to do a ton of practice because this is a pretty loaded grammar topic with a lot of rules, a lot of irregular verbs, so it's very important that you take thorough notes and you study them well. The majority of studying this grammar topic is going to be memorization and practice. So the first thing we're going to do is just read and observe. You're not going to write anything down yet. So the first two sentences are pon la mesa en el comedor. No pongas la mesa en el comedor. So what I want you to do as you listen to these and read along with me is just observe the differences in the sentence on the left versus the sentence on the right. So I'm going to say them again. Pon la mesa en el comedor. No pongas la mesa en el comedor. Barre el suelo en la cocina. No barras el suelo en la cocina. Haz la cama en tu cuarto. No hagas la cama en tu cuarto. Lava los platos. No laves los platos. So again, what differences do you notice between the bolded verbs on the left and the verbs on the right? So these are obviously words from your vocabulario from Unidad 8, like poner la mesa, barrer el suelo, hacer la cama, and lavar los platos. But what you're seeing is a difference in the way the verb is structured. You're also noticing that there's no subject that's obvious in these sentences. So what that tells us is that we're using structure called a command. It's the imperative form. So starting here, you need to write these down. So the first question, what is an informal command? Okay, this is telling someone what to do or what not to do. And this seems like an obvious point, but I want you to write it down anyway. So an informal command, or a command in general, is to tell someone what to do or what not to do. The command is informal because you're talking to either someone younger than you, a close friend, it could be a sibling or a close family member, and it's someone that you're comfortable with. So think about the tú versus the usted. So tú is informal and usted is formal. So sometimes you might hear me consider these two commands because that gives you the context of the person you're speaking to or giving the command to. So not to as in to, but tú as in tu with an accent, the informal you. So to whom are you speaking? You're speaking to someone that you would call tú to say you. And that would be the informal. So again, someone younger than you, a close friend, a sibling, close family member, and someone you're comfortable with. And also remember, commands are not always negative. They don't always have to be something demanding or sound rude. It's just a form of a verb. All right, so how to create an informal command. This is the steps to making the command be spelled correctly and making sure you're saying it correctly. So when you give a command, you can either tell somebody what to do or you can tell somebody what not to do. So the first thing is, how do you create a command to someone informally telling them what to do? And the way you do this is to use the third person singular form of the verb. You've done this before. Third person singular is just the bottom left of the chart, the él and ella form. So even though you're talking to somebody, the tú form, the you form, you're still going to spell the command using the same spelling as the él and ella form. So you take off your ending and you add a for AR verbs, or you take off your ER and IR and add E on those verbs. So we'll do lots of examples in practice in class, but that's the main idea, is when you want to tell someone what to do, informally, you use the third person singular form. So you conjugate the verb as if it were él and ella. Okay, so that's your ending. That means that the command is going to be spelled the same as a he, she verb. Okay, again, and we'll do some práctica in class. Side note here, because stem changing verbs are in the L shape, that highlighted section of your chart is included. So that means that any verb that is a stem changing verb will still change when you create a command. So stem changing verbs still change. All right, so again, making sure you write all this down. To tell someone what to do, use the third person singular form of the verb. That's a or e. So it either ends with an a or an e, depending if it's an AR verb or if it's an ER or IR verb. And then again, stem changing verbs still change. To tell someone what not to do, you have 3 steps. Number 1, you're going to put the verb in the yo form, just like you always have. So AR verb, ER verb, and IR verb, all ends with an O. You have to put it in the yo form because there are some verbs, remember, that are irregular yos, like the GO verbs, and then stem changers, again, will stem change in the yo form. So put it in the yo form first, like you've been doing. Then take the O off and add your opposite tu ending. That's the second spot on the left, the tu form. So for AR verbs, that's ES, because it's the opposite. For ER and IR verbs, you're going to use the AS ending. So same verb endings, you're just doing the opposite tu form. And again, step 1 is important so that you account for irregular yo verbs and stem changers. For example, if you say, don't set the table is poner la mesa. Well, the yo form is pongo. The opposite ending is AS. So it would be no pongas. So you have to put it in the yo form to get that irregular yo as part of your final spelling. So if you start with the yo form, you're in good shape to create your negative command in the right way. And then big note here, even though you're using a command to somebody in the informal, in the to form, it's not the to verb conjugation. So you're never, ever, ever going to write the subject with the command. That will help the person that you are talking to or the person reading your sentence. It will help them understand that you're given a command, you're not writing a sentence. So never write the subject with the command because there's not one, it's just implied. All right, so then there are irregular affirmative commands. These are do commands, telling someone what to do. Some verbs are irregular when you use them as affirmative commands. Remember, write everything down. This is a pretty extensive list. You need to write all the way across what you see. So the verb ser means to be. If you're going to tell someone be something, you're going to use se, S-E with an accent. These have to be memorized. You can't just use that third person like you do for regular verbs. So if it's on this list, memorize it. You can't follow the rule for making a command. You have to memorize it. It's irregular. Ir, the command form is ve. Decir, the command form is di. Venir, the command form is ven. You might have heard someone say, ven aquí, come here. Hacer, the command form is haz. Tener, ten. Poner, pon. Salir, sal. If you recall back on our vocabulario video lesson where you had the list of chores from the mom, those list of chores were in the command form. So you've seen some of these before, you just didn't realize at the time why they were spelled the way they are and what they literally translated into. So there's only 8. Again, it's se, ve, di, ven, haz, ten, pon, and sal. And then you have your translations. You need to make sure all 8 of those are written down and how to spell them in the command. And then, of course, for a negative, the don't do commands, there are 4 irregulars. So again, some verbs are irregular when you use them as negative commands, and here they are. Ser is irregular again. This time it's no seas, because with negative commands you put the no, because you're telling someone not to do something. So that would be don't be. Ir, no vayas, don't go. Dar is to give, no des, don't give. And estar, to be, no estés, don't be. So you see the opposite to form, the AS and the ES? Again, that shows you that it's negative commands. These are the only 4 that are negative, and if you look closely, you can see that a way to remember them is this acronym SIDE, S-I-D-E, ser, ir, dar, estar. Now, if you can come up with a creative way for the affirmative irregulars, that's great, but there's 8 of them, and again, you just have to memorize those. So 8 irregular affirmatives and 4 irregular negatives. Now, also a side note for negative commands, because you're doing an opposite ending, sometimes there's a spelling change. This happens in all languages. And for Spanish, the negative informal commands have a spelling change when the verb ends with car, gar, or zar. So we call these the cargar are verbs, and you're going to hear them in Spanish 1 again later on when we do práctica, and then in Spanish 2 you're going to hear them a lot. So for verbs that end with car, gar, or zar, you're going to use the following endings for that step 3 when you add the opposite. So car verbs go to QUES. For example, don't take out the trash. No saques la basura. Gar verbs change to GUES. Example, don't play video games. Here you see the stem changer and the opposite spelling change ending. No juegues los videojuegos. Don't play video games. And then the zar verb goes to, the ZAR is removed and it's changed to CES. So empezar, to begin. If I say don't begin the homework, its stem changes and the zar changes to CES. So no empieces la tarea. Don't begin the homework. Those are just spelling change irregulars that you have to memorize how they change in the negative command. Only when they're negative. Alright, so I'm leaving you with this. Actually, it's in the command form. Práctica, práctica, práctica. Now, with an accent, the word means practice. Like when we do our práctica in class, we're doing actual practice work, the noun. But this, without an accent, all you see is the verb practicar in the third person singular. It's a command. I'm telling you, practice, practice, practice. Práctica, práctica, práctica. So be ready for a ton of in-class practice on regular verbs, affirmative and negative, irregular verbs, affirmative and negative, putting all your vocab in context to see how do we tell somebody what to do or what not to do when you're speaking to someone informally. If you have questions, let me know. Make sure you have gone back, paused it, taken time to write down everything accurately and thoroughly. And like I said, we'll do some práctica in class.